This could be the most important video you ever watch if you are seriously considering buying land. And here's why. See, this piece of land behind me is like $5,000 for the acre. And I can totally understand the allure of going out and buying a super cheap piece of land. But here's the problem. Buying cheap land could be the most expensive mistake you ever make. Here's why. See, the thing is that most land is usually not zoned correctly for the thing that you're trying to do on that land. Most of the time, it doesn't have power, water, or sewer on the land, and it can take you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to take a cheap piece of land like this and make it construction ready. Today's video is gonna show you how to avoid a lot of the mistakes that rookies make whenever buying land, and admittedly, help you avoid the mistakes that I made when I was first getting started in buying land. I'm gonna be doing this today with my good friend and business partner, Kai Andrew. He specializes in short-term rentals like me, but specifically in alternative real estate strategies, land buying, land hacking, and so much more. And we are gonna be breaking down exactly what we look for in land when we are looking at the thousands and thousands of deals that come across our desk every single year. And let me just say, I am so excited to jump into this podcast because my freaking arm is so tired from holding this camera. So all this and more on today's episode of Rob Builds.
I think you and I, it's fair to say we know a thing or two about land. We've learned a lot. We've failed a lot. I mean, I have. I'm not going to say you failed, but I have certainly learn through my failures. And so today's episode is really kind of meant to be like, hey, what are 5 or 6 mistakes that people make when kind of going into this dreamy idea of buying land? So why don't you kick off mistake number 1 that you see people make, and we'll kind of go down the list here and hopefully save people thousands of dollars and a lot of time wasted.
Yeah, for sure. The first one out of the 7 that I usually say is I tell my folks or tell my clients to follow the power lines. What that means is that utility access quite often, especially if you're a beginner, should be a deal breaker for you. What I mean by this is that sometimes there's some great pieces of land. There's actually really inexpensive land all over the United States. There's more land than there is cities in the United States. I'm not sure if you guys know that. But what happens is that you can't get utilities to it. The biggest one is power. And so there is a solution for sewer. It's called a septic system. Mm-hmm. There's a solution to not having city water. It's called the well. If you don't have access to a well or you can't dig a well, then you can get a cistern or above ground or below ground, right? Those are solvable. If you don't have power, the only thing that you have available to you is solar. And solar is difficult depending where you're at in the country, because if you need to run AC or air conditioning or heating system, that basically just consumes all the energy.
It's exhaustive and it's expensive too. I mean, I will tell you, I put solar panels on this property, and I spent more than I thought I would. I'll say that. I think we're looking at $30,000 in solar panels, and we've got 2 batteries, and it's not a cheap system, and It would power my house for 8 hours if the power went out. So, if I really wanted this property to be off grid, and granted, this is a larger property than probably most people would build, but you're still talking like 60 to 100K for like a super souped up system. So it's expensive.
Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, is how expensive solar really can be once you add in the batteries and all the panels and everything. If you're trying to run an AC, a lot of times people want to go off grid in the country, out in the desert or something. I was like, you're in Houston, you get 100-degree days a lot, right, in the summertime.
Sadly.
Yeah, you have that AC running and keeping the house at 70 degrees. I mean, good luck. If the power goes out, hopefully the sun is out and there's no clouds, but maybe you'll last until the evening. But follow the power lines. The reason why that's so important is because you'll understand where the power is. Usually you want it at street level. The general rule of thumb I tell folks is that for every foot away from the main power line or the transformer, you're going to be spending anywhere from $3 to $20 to get power to your build site. And so the difference in that pricing is just totally dependent on your location, whether you go above ground, so think about literally power poles across your property, which you can probably see in a lot of farms and such, or if you want to go the nice fancy route, which I usually opt for, especially on my higher end unique properties, is you go underground. But then now you have
a lot more
conduit,
though,
you have to
right?
dig a trench and all that stuff. And that's usually upwards of about $20-ish a foot, a linear foot, once you factor in the wire and the line, the conduit and everything.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I've built out in Joshua Tree a couple of times, and there's always this idea of like, oh, I see a house over there, so I should be good. They have power, I'll get power. But, pretty easily, basically, I can't remember the exact distance, but I think every power pole in transformer can go like 100 or 200 yards, right? And so if you have to put 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 poles between you and that nearest neighbor with power, well, those poles can cost anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000, general numbers here. So, let's say it's $7K, or I think $10K is really what I'm used to paying out there. If you got 7 poles, I mean, you could spend $70,000 to get power to your property.
Yeah.
And so that's something that a lot of people don't think about, because they're like, oh, this land is 5K. Maybe if the power is 10K, I'm good to go. But $70,000 is generally not in the budget for most people.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up. So the other side is, if you're just trying to get power to a property, that makes sense. So $70,000 to $100,000, I'd say, is probably a fair bet if you want to go above ground. But you and I were under contract. Remember the 164 acres in West Virginia?
West Virginia, yeah.
So we were grading numbers on that. We were actually a quarter mile to a half a mile back off the road. And so you can see that gets really expensive really quickly. But now we're trying to develop a really nice hospitality landscape hotel. We don't want these big, ugly power lines going through the entire property, sticking up and blocking views and such, right? So now we have to go underground, which basically doubles the price. But if we did want to do the power pole route, you have to understand, like in these areas with lots of trees, they have to cut about 20 feet side to side to basically give clearance so branches don't fall on the power poles. So now you're talking about another several tens of thousands of dollars for arborists to come out, either cut down trees, clear the way, or cut branches to open up that whole area for the power lines to go through. So there's a lot of unknown expenses in there too. So when you see a beautiful piece of land that's $30,000, the first thing that I say, especially being from the Pacific Northwest, if I see trees, I immediately know that it's going to probably cost me at least $50,000 to even maybe $200,000 just to bring power to my build site.
What is an ideal scenario? Like if you're looking at land, what's kind of a green flag as it pertains to power? Like a power pole right on the property?
Yeah, so ideal situation is you have a build site that's relatively close to the street or the transformer, or you see a power pole. If you see that, then you can obviously walk it off. I usually have like a tape wheel that I just kind of walk out. And I already know the general numbers, $3 to $20 a square per linear foot. That's the ideal scenario. If there is no power in the area, and keep in mind, you want to keep zoning, you have to understand zoning and county requirements too. Sometimes they force you to be connected to city power or connected to city sewer. Okay, so it's not even an option.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so if they force me to, and I know I have to, and the closest power source is a mile away, that's a no-go. That's a deal breaker for me. So just understand that. But yeah, if you see a transformer or power pole, or you know that there's power right at the street level, the main street level, and you know your build site's relatively close to that, that's something that's worthwhile to look into. But if it's further back, man, it can be a tough pill to swallow.
Generally speaking, I'd say I'm typically looking for neighbors nearby that have a power pole transformer nearby, and I'm not really usually willing to risk going much further because I have been in the situations where the power is 30 or 40 or 50K to get to the property, and you're just like, man, I was not expecting 10% of my budget to go to that. So okay, well, let's hop into number 2.
Okay, so that was number 1, follow the power lines. Number 2 is what we say is call the county, not the seller. And so what I mean by that is that most of the time, I think you realize this too, working with your clients and your members, is they think the real estate agent or the seller will give you all the information. What's the zoning, what the docs, the surveys, all that stuff, right? Now, if they have it, that's great. That's nice. But what's better is actually just to check with the county to understand what's going on with the property, understand the zoning, understand the permits that it has, understand the any type of requirements or deed restrictions on that property. it's all held. I can't think. I've dealt with over 3 dozen counties at this time. Every single time, most of that information, if not all the information, is at the county records office. And then any information that you need to know about zoning or permits is at the land use or development department. So don't rely on agents. And I know I'm speaking to the agents out there right now. Not all agents are created equal.
Sure. Yeah.
Some agents just want to close the deal. And they will say whatever it needs to be said. Oh yeah, you can do an Airbnb here. Oh yeah, you can do an STR. Oh yeah, you can build the ADU. And lo and behold, somebody buys that property. They're like, hey, I just got shut down by the county because I can't build or I can't do XYZ. The agent said I could. Yeah. Don't talk to them.
Yeah. You never really want to go off of an agent. Again, I love my agents. They're great, but you got to corroborate your own stuff. Caveat emptor, I believe is the phrase, which is you must verify yourself as the buyer. My good friend Pace Morby has often said, buyers are liars and sellers are worse. And I think that's a really, really good way to think about it. I will tell you pretty much, can you pretend to call me and ask me about my, just call me right now. Just say, hey.
Yeah.
And say,
ring.
Okay. Hello?
Hey, I was just calling to ask about your property. Do you know, I want to build an ADU on it. Can I build on there?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's pretty much how all those calls go. So it's like, don't do it. There's just, you should definitely corroborate with the county. I'm going to say this. I'm selling my property in Sevierville. It's 52 acres. I have gotten it fully permitted, entitled. I could build I think I'm approved for up to 5 units on that property, and I'm selling it kind of as is, sort of what it is. And what I've instructed my agent to do is tell whoever is looking at that property to call the county. I don't want to be responsible. I don't want my agent saying, yes, the seller said you could do this. Yes, the seller is permitted for this. Because I feel like just at that moment, I kind of get into this liability of like, well, you said this. And I'm like, you must call the county yourself and figure it out for yourself, because most sellers are not really going to play ball and not really disclose what. With that West Virginia deal, we have to do some uncovering of facts, and we found out that there was like a illegal mine operation or something on there. And they were like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And we're like, dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It was what was it called? It was uncapped gas wells, and nobody knew who owned them. So yeah, basically it was mining operation that nobody knew who owns it, and somebody had to plug the gas wells that have not been plugged properly, and it was I think it was like $300,000 to $3 million fix and legal fees, and we're just like, we're walking away from this.
Yeah, and we had to find that out because
we figured it out. The seller had no idea.
So call your county, folks. I think that's the moral of the story. And then, genuinely speaking, I would say this. I think this is the most important thing you can do. It's not going to be the most accessible thing for those of you that are looking, if you live in Texas and you're looking for land in New York, this is going to be hard. But truly, I think where you break ground, pun intended, is to go into the office and talk to the county. Because often what happens is people will call and they'll say, hey, yeah, I'm looking at this land and saw this guy Rob built. He's doing these tiny homes. Like, how do I build a tiny home? And then they're just kind of like, oh my God, another tiny home glamping we hate it. And then they just kind of like write you off and they don't talk to you. And then when you go in person, they're like, oh, you're a real human. You can build a rapport. They're not going to, in my experience, they're going to give you the time of day more than phone research. Now,
100%.
You have to do the phone research. We all do it. But I'm just saying, if you can go in person, it just opens up new doors for you.
Yep. I completely agree with that. All right. We ready for number 3?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Number 3, drive the last mile yourself. I know a lot of folks are buying property and looking for properties remotely, or at a distance. They have an agent or they have friends looking at it, and maybe they'll fly out. But the folks who are actually driving and going to the properties, this is not for you. This is for folks who are trying to buy it sight unseen. And a lot of times you might find a really good deal. You find a really cool property. You might drive in front of it, but really go that last mile and get onto the property and find the build sites, find where the utilities are, if there are any, and just see what it's like. And quite often what you'll find, especially on unwanted, undeveloped land or rural properties, is that you'll have mud roads, gravel roads, or washed out roads. And then you quickly realize, this is another thing that people don't think about, are that access ways are super important towards construction and remodeling. A lumber truck, a water truck, any type of delivery vehicle, and obviously emergency vehicles, they are several tons. Like we're talking about 5, 10, 15 plus tons, depending on what materials they're bringing on, like a cement truck, for example, to pour foundation. Yeah. It cannot make it up a hill if it's all mud and washed out gravel. And so you have to put in a roadway there. And a lot of times when you start putting roadways in, it can get pretty expensive. We're talking about tens of thousands, even getting up towards 100,000, depending on how far back you have to go and the slope and the terrain. So drive that last mile, understand what the terrain looks like, and make sure that you're factoring in the costs of like not just the utilities, but like I got to put a driveway in here so my trucks can get up this way. That could be easily $20,000 worth of gravel.
Well, a couple of things. Yeah. Let's talk about this. So we went and looked at property in Arizona several years ago, and it's the dreamiest piece of property ever. Like you look at the photos and it's kind of like, yeah, dude, let's make the offer here. It's great. It's zoned perfectly. And thankfully we went out there and looked at it because like you're in your car and it's literally just like the whole time, like it's crazy how bad that road is.
Yeah.
And for me as a short-term rental person, like you have to kind of predict what your guests are going to say or think as they're going down these roads. And if these roads are horrible and they're just like these mud roads that are like just super bumpy, then you must be ready for guest feedback that's going to be, retaliatory. And then we also had these mud roads too that we weren't legally mandated to do anything with them. They could remain mud roads. But dude, when it snowed or when it rained, it turned so muddy that our guests just by the dozens, man, it felt like sometimes like we just had every guest that would just get stuck with no service, and they would send us a message and they're like, we're stuck. And luckily we had someone on site that could come and tow them out. But there's like considerations like that, where if you're actually building for the sake of having an experience, you have to make sure that it's a good one, because if that road is bumpy, man, that's going to be bad. The other thing that I think a lot of people kind of neglect or sort of don't realize, and these are things that you just learn playing the game after a while, access to the property. There are many beautiful properties that are like 100 acres that are like, wow, why is it $50,000? This doesn't make sense, until you realize that you have no legal road access to that property. So make sure that you're not landlocked, I think, is another big one that I think people probably miss pretty easily.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're landlocked, you are most likely getting your property on an easement, and you definitely want to understand easement, what's inside the easement, who has access and who has rights to it, and what you can do with that little sliver of road onto your property. I say that as somebody who has an easement onto my own property to allow my neighbors to get to their property. So there's just behind me is a small driveway or small roadway where people can drive through it. So they had to pay pay the previous owner of this property to put that easement through, and then I inherited that easement.
One other final thing, this is coming to me. This is not necessarily like a mistake, but it's kind of in this vein of the road access and everything. If you're truly if you're trying to do like a proper development where you're going to have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 units on there like we were trying to do, there's such a thing as like a traffic study that basically the local counties will want to know how many people are expected to drive and traverse this. And part of this is, are the roads wide enough and maintained enough for ambulances and fire trucks to drive down? Yeah. And that was like a big one for us. And then on top of that, the big kind of aha, or like the big gotcha moment for this development was that the highway was too narrow and we had to add a whole nother lane to the highway to continue to develop our land. And that was going to be a $300,000 to $350,000 construction cost. So that kind of, they didn't kill the deal, but that's one of those like, dang, that's 50% of our budget right there.
Yeah. When most people come to me and they ask like, okay, I want to build an RV park. I want to build this glampground or campground here. And the first thing I ask is, how many doors do you want and how much traffic are you bringing into the area? And they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe 20 to 50 sites. And I was like, what's currently there? And they're like, oh, it's nothing. It's just raw land. The first thing I tell them is like, earmark $300,000 and put it to the side for road development. Most people don't think about when you start doing commercial operations, like what you're just talking about. The first thing the county is going to do is they're going to do a traffic study assessment and see how you're going to impact the area. And you're right, bring in sewer. So this is where we came in. This is why we walked away from one of our previous deals. Is we had to they forced us to connect to city sewage, and the city sewage was like 3/4 of a mile away. And then we found out that it was going to cost us like $2 million just to bring sewage to our campground.
Yeah.
So we're just like,
yeah, that's rough.
Because we would have to rip up the entire road, lay out new sewer system all the way to the property, fill it in. We have to do stop traffic, all this stuff. It was something like 1.7, 1.8, something like that, $1 million to do it correctly. So we obviously walked away.
50,000. How could this
I know, right?
Yeah.
So that's not, we haven't even touched the land yet. That was just for the sewer system. And then we had to do the same thing for power. And then, so all of a sudden, something that was only supposed to cost us like $1 million, all of a sudden now it was like $5 to $6 million for development.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hit them with number 4.
Okay, number 4.
We're talking about development, and I think this is also the big gotcha that people are probably not expecting.
Neighbors and noise. So
Neighbors, NIMBYs and noise.
Yeah, there you go. Well, wait. What's NIMBYs?
Not in my backyard.
Oh,
folks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
not in my backyard.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you guys see my properties, you could usually see that my properties, well, not all of them, but the properties that I get nowadays typically don't have neighbors. And if I do have neighbors, I make sure that I have the right permits where even the neighbors complain, I have the right to do what I want to do. So it sides on my side. The law or the ordinances side on my side. So 3 things that we normally talk about or we teach is 3 S's: sight, sound, and smell. One of those big things is because of neighbors. Neighbors can shut you down faster than you can think, even if you're doing things legally. And 3,006 counties in the United States, I would say dang near 100% of them are reactive. And what that means is that they only react when they get complaints. So if you have a Karen, what's the male equivalent of a Karen? A John? A Chad?
Chad?
Yeah. Okay.
I think Chad's more of like a finance bro, but I think Chad's cool. Let's do this.
Okay, so you have a Chad and a Karen that live next door. If they decide because they don't like that you have a different vehicle in your driveway every weekend, they can make a complaint to the county, and the county will have to investigate it and look into it. And if you are tripping up on one little thing, you could get a notice on your doorstep about shutting down operations or something, where they catch you in the act of doing something that may not be 100% kosher or legal. Befriend your neighbors and respect them as much as you can. But a lot of times, before I buy a property, I really do take a gander at who my neighbors are. I try to meet them if I can, and then I also look at local ordinances and laws to see if it favors my neighbors or if it favors me. And then what I mean by that is the structures and activities that I want to conduct on that property, if it aligns more with what I want to do or aligns more if my neighbors complain about it.
Yeah, so I've gone through the conditional use permit, special use permit process a few times now. I'd say three proper times. Mm-hmm. And 2 out of the 3 were dramatic opposition to what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Shut down those projects practically. Yep. And one of them in Sevierville was surprisingly weirdly easy. Like I like they voted and was like all in favor, and they're like aye. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I did it. Which begs the question, why didn't I even build it? It doesn't matter. We'll talk about that some other time. But the other 2, I mean, dude, the first one was like all the neighbors in Arizona. And I mean, we could push and we could get this approved. But the interesting thing is like, they were putting up a big stink about it. They didn't want these like, yuppie things affecting the values of their properties, which I can tell you, those properties, they were not worth much. They were the nightmare properties that like they're properties that you would pray that your like guests would never see. But it's
did it have like a broken car in the front yard?
It's like double wide, like hoarder junkyard type situation. Yep. And it's like literally you drive past it to get to the land. So that was the guy that's like, you're gonna affect my property values, and I was like, You're right. I am by raising your property.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
we got kind of shut down. We could have pushed. The problem with this in weirdly in Arizona specifically is that even if we got that conditional use permit, it's for 5 years. And if we don't follow our business plan and narrative to the T, basically our neighbors could be like, hey, they didn't do what they said. And then they could revoke it after 5 years.
Right.
And so we could have gotten the permit, but we're like, well, if we spend $3 million developing this and then they just revoke it in 5 years, we're kind of screwed. So we didn't really pursue that because those neighbors were just too finicky. On the other time that I kind of went through this in Virginia, I mean, I went through the whole process, man. And like, we bought this 20, dude, it was small. I mean, it was like seven acres. It was not a big piece of land, and we were going to build like 5 tiny A-frames on there. Dude, the neighbors went crazy. I'm talking like they went to every single person in the city, got these crazy petitions. They like found out who I was. They like pulled excerpts from like interviews like this. Like they would have taken what I just said about that guy's house and been like, see, this is how he talks about people. And like, dude, it's never, apparently it's the first, like literally the town hall was jam packed with people like spilling out, trying to shut down this 7-unit A-frame development.
Wow.
So I say this to say you could buy land that checks a lot of boxes, but if you're not making the effort to get to know your neighbors and to go down this route that you're talking about, you know, you're not really in the clear. You know, neighbors can really present a huge issue for you. And so this is something that you kind of want to go and test the sentiment and kind of understand who are you building around, because not everyone wants a glamp site, a dome village, a tiny home village next to them, even though we know it's cool, but not everybody wants that. And so that could be something that's like a project shut down pretty right away, I would say.
Maybe that guy, he wasn't worried about the property value going up. Maybe he was afraid that you're going to increase his property taxes.
Okay, and that's, I mean, you know, that's fair. I get that. You know, it was kind of one of those things where everybody came and we were doing it through Zoom. So we got to hear their complaints, and they were all just kind of saying, like one girl was like, well, I don't know. My parents gave me this land. I've actually never been, but I don't know. I don't know if I want that next to my land. And I'm like, you've never even been. So it's just like you never really know what kind of backlash you might get from the neighbors type of thing.
It's so crazy. I mean, you don't have to keep this in. I'll tell you a super fast story about so I just got done with the conditional use permit I told you about. We just got approved about a week or two ago. And
I didn't know that. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
That's insane. Yeah.
It's awesome. So long story short, if you want to keep this in, this is great. But basically, nobody will be able to have an Airbnb competition within 750 feet of our property. And we're like right on the main strip. So basically 750 feet around me, nobody else can have an Airbnb, which is awesome. But we had to go through the conditional use permit. So we sent out all the mailers, all the flyers, all that stuff, right? And nobody made a complaint except my neighbor that's kitty corner to me, to the house, to the property. And he wrote in, and his only complaint was, keep in mind, we've been in there for 3 months and we've been doing a full remodel job on the property. He said the homeowner didn't even have the gall to come and introduce himself, and now he's asking to take advantage of our community, and he just wants to profit from us and not contribute back. With all of my might, I would like to dissuade you from allowing him to provide him this permit. And his thing was just because I didn't go and introduce myself to him. Granted, I've been traveling. This is right after the holidays, and we submitted for the permit in February, and then he wrote that letter in March. And so it just gives you an idea, like some of the people that you're around, they might not align with your views, even if it doesn't make rational sense. But luckily, the county official landed on my side. He approved it anyways, and we're totally fine. But
nice. So is it going to be like a single structure or multiple structures?
It is multiple doors. So there's 4 doors on the property. So it's 7 bedrooms, 7 bath. And so basically what we got the permit for, why we needed the conditional use permit, is in the city of Portland, you can't rent out more than 2 bedrooms. And if you want to rent out more than 2 bedrooms, you can go up to 5 bedrooms, which we're going to do with this property. is that you have to go through a conditional use process, which is a relatively long process, usually about 5 to 6 months, sometimes a little bit longer, and cost upwards of $10,000. And so not a lot of people do it. But yeah, so this one we'll be able to split it up. So without going too much detail, there's multiple doors on it. So what we want to do is we're going to create kind of like a micro resort inside the city. So if like your family and my family want to go to Portland and be right on the main strip and go to all the nice restaurants, your family will have a portion of the house, and then Sarah and I will have our own private master suite, and then maybe our parents would have their own private master suite as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you said not to get too into the details, but then you did.
Sorry. Just talk too much.
No, I love it. Well, congrats. We'll take this offline because I'm interested in that. Okay. Well, bring us home. Well, actually, no, we have 2 more. So hit us with no, actually, we have 3 more. Okay. Let's land the plane. Maybe.
Okay. Number 5. Yeah. You ready?
Number 5. What is the 5th kind of mistake or thing to look out for when buying a piece of land?
Yeah, it's called the pipeline. So county development pipeline. You always want to know what's coming up. And so this is great just for all investors, mostly commercial. Think about the big investors, hundreds of millions of dollars into multifamily commercial structures. This is what they do ahead of time. We want to do it too, even on our smaller scale. Less than $100 million is considered smaller scale. What this is if you go talk to the county, you should be able to get records or an idea of what their development plans are for the area. If you guys heard of urban growth boundaries or development plans, development goals, zoning district goals, all that stuff, it's all the same verbiage. It's basically there's an internal zoning plan or development plan for the city or for the township. And the more that you understand what they're trying to do, the better that you can invest. And so if you know that they're expanding the highway, they're adding new schools, they're adding a new mall, they're adding a new adventure park, Disneyland, something like that, right? If you know that this is coming down the pipeline in 3, 5, 6, 7 years, and you know that, and you can buy up 5, 10 acres right now, you might not make a bunch of money in the first 5 years unless you build something really cool. But over the length of the time of you owning that property, you could actually walk away with a lot of money because you know what the development plans are coming.
Got it.
A lot of wealthy,
not like an oil pipeline. It's just literally like the pipeline of things that are kind of in the works for expanding the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Yeah, that's kind of like 2.0, 3.0 level there. I don't know a lot of people that are like, yeah, well, let's see what they're going to build 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's very common if you go to a bigger city, something like a Chicago, Portland, LA, anything like that. Well, LA is one, right? Where they have plans to put in like a transit system, new bus lines, new roadways, road expansions, anything like that. That's usually on the docket and right up front. So if you understand where those areas are, typically there's going to be a lot of new businesses, bars, restaurants around common spaces around those areas, and you can invest in those spots.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's like nugget of the thing right there. Because is it hard to find that stuff, or is that accessible online? Do you have to call? Do they have like old school blueprints that they pull out from like a file? Like, how does this information exist?
It's so dependent county to county, city to city. Usually what I do is you go to the land use department or you go to the zoning district department and you just ask them about county or city development plans. It's all public information. They can either give you a PDF, they can send you to a website, but usually it's all public information knowledge. It's just kind of tucked away because some of these counties are a little bit more archaic in how they present the data. Yeah.
If there are no development plans, if they're like, yeah, there is nothing planned, is that kind of like I should not invest here type of thing? Or is it just more reinforcing if there is?
It's more reinforcing if there is. Usually if you worked with you or with me, typically we are investing in an area because we see something that's outside of the development plans. The development plans just help a lot. Like if they're putting a cemetery or like an industrial power plant right next to you, you probably don't want to invest in that area if you're trying to cater towards vacationers and to single family residents, right?
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, we've probably done a lot of the underwriting already in that area. This is just really good information for us to see. So if it's doing nothing, it doesn't help or it doesn't hurt. But it doesn't look good on the city either. They have like no plans on what to do next.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take us to number 6.
All right. Number 6.
Someone should take a look at, understand, not make this mistake.
Yeah, so this is for our rural folks who are buying land that are not connected to city water, is our wells. So wells are very, very important, especially with how much it's increased in price over the last like 5 years. You need water on your property. There's 3 ways of getting it. There's one where you're connected to city water, obviously, that's the easy one. 2 is to drill a well, and then 3 is to have a cistern, an on-site cistern that gets filled up by like a big water truck that shows up every week.
So it's like hauled in water, basically.
Yep. And you can have it above ground or you can have it below ground. Next time you guys are at Home Depot and you see those big, giant black tanks that are sitting in the parking lot, that's a water cistern.
Yeah.
And so, but most of us, what we do, we ideally will have a well there. Now, wells can be hit or miss. So every foot to dig a well is approximately $40 to maybe $100 in the most extreme cases to drill a well. Okay, so take whatever the depth is, multiply it between 40 to 100, and that's usually your price. And then we also have the equipment above with the with your pump house, because you have to pump up the water. Now, what's really important here is if you dig a well, and let's say it's 600 feet down, so let's just do some rough math. Let's say it's $100 a foot, so that's $60,000. And you hit a dry pocket. You still have to pay the $60,000. And now you can go dig another well.
I've heard of this. So I've heard of this quite a bit. I feel like it seems like most people don't, thankfully, run into this, but I have heard that you can spend $50K and not hit water ever.
Yep. And we actually had a member do that. Oh. It's unfortunate, but
how do you know when to what if you keep drilling? Is it possible that, instead of going, you said 100 feet or 60 feet, let's just say, can you keep going on the premise that maybe there'll be water, or is the company usually trained enough to be like, yeah, hey, in our experience, this is a good stopping point?
Yeah, it's hit or miss. So typically what they have is, I forgot what they call it. Again, county records office. So wells, there's a couple things that you always need permits for. So even in unrestricted, no zoning areas, if it comes to septic system, well, and power, you still need permits for that. So most counties, I should say all counties, but I don't think all counties do it, but most counties out there will have well permits pulled. And what they have to do is whenever you drill a well, it tells you the depth of it. And over time, what happens is you have these underground water tables in different areas. And so these well drillers, the good ones anyways, they will know where the water table is for that particular property based off of all the other permits pulled around you. So if everybody around you is at 200 feet, we can make a strong assumption that you're going to be right around that range, right? And so usually what they'll do is they'll take a look at the water table based off the permits of the properties around you. They'll do an estimate. They'll give you that estimate, stick a drill in the ground, and just start going. Now, this is the part where it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about access ways. These are big trucks. These drill trucks are not small, and it's a big drill. It's really heavy. If you don't have an access way to a relatively flat area for that well to be drilled, now you're spending money to get an access way to the well area. And if that's not near your build site, now you have to put in a bigger pump, or you have to do something creative to get water to the build site. So all of these you have to keep in mind, because these unwanted land, usually when it's really inexpensive, there's already people like you and I is like, wait, if the only area that we can drill wells over there, and I want to build over there, it's going to cost me a lot of money to bring my water from here to there, and I have to build a whole road over there for my truck to drill. Right now, all of a sudden, your budget is off of whack, or out of whack by like $100,000.
Yeah, this is a big one for us in Arizona, man. Like, the land is cheap out there, but in general, like, no one is on a well. Like, I don't know if it's just that type of land or that type of dirt in that area. It's like, I think it's mostly clay, what I've been told, and so it's just very expensive to drill, and it's just never worth it. And then same thing with septics. You can't just do like a regular septic system. You have to do a alternative septic system or something. Yeah, and it ends up being way more expensive. And I think, generally speaking, if a piece of land is $10K, there's a reason. You know, developable land is usually more. That's a generalization, but That's kind of been my experience thus far.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We have a couple members and clients who have properties out in Williams and Coconino County out there in Arizona. Yeah, they all have above ground or below ground. Most of them are above ground cisterns because they just can't drill.
Right, and that's the route, because we're thinking about building cabins on our land out there, but it makes it a little prohibitive on the financing. You can still finance something with cisterns. I just think it's a little tougher to get the bank on board sometimes, but that may just be with the lenders that I've worked with. I can't say that for everybody.
No, that's a really good point. A lot of lenders, they don't like quote unquote off-grid applications. So if you just have a black tank, well, it's not a true septic system, you have to get it pumped, or you just have cisterns, or you just have solar power, you're not connected to the grid. I would say automatically 80 to 90% of lenders will walk away from that deal.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so, if your idea is to build or get a construction loan, you kind of want to make sure that your land, you check the boxes. And this is really like half of the list I think we put together. If you guys want to see a part 2, let us know. We'll do another 6 mistakes to watch out for. But let's get to the last one, and then we'll send everyone home here. But last one, I'm gonna read it because I wrote this and I like the way it sounds. Okay,
go for it.
Number 7: if it's steep, don't take the leap. All right. This is perhaps the biggest mistake I see as someone that used to live in LA. This idea of like, oh my gosh, whoa, this piece of land in Malibu's $10,000, and it's like it's on a cliff and the views of the ocean are insane. Well, what most people don't understand is that when a piece of property is super steep or it's on a cliff, the reason it's $10,000 is because to build the foundation on that piece of land is usually going to cost you like $200,000 to $300,000. And so if you're on mostly sloped land, the build costs are just going to be exponentially higher than if you're on a flat piece of land.
Yep, 100% agree. So this property that I'm on right now is 7 acres. Only about 1.5 acres is buildable because the other 5.5 acres is on heavily steep, not just steep, but historical landslide issues. So we have a historical landslide map out here, and I'm basically on that landslide area. So what you can't see is about maybe 40 feet to my left, and then 40 feet to my, south, is just straight drop off landslide areas. And to build on this property, it was going to be very expensive, and that's why it shunned away a lot of buyers. But we were able to find a spot. We did the ground testing and everything so that we could build the foundation correctly, so we could actually have a house. But cool. Unfortunately, we can't build on the rest of the acreage just because of exactly what you said. It's too steep, and you can't build on it.
Yeah, my property in Sevierville is in the critical slope zone for the majority of the 52 acres. So we have a main house up on the mountain, which is great. That's a pretty decent Airbnb. We've got 2 acres on the ground of that property, and that's where we got permits for the 4 to 5 units. So let's say that would be 2 acres. We'll call it 1 acre for the house. So the other 49 acres are on like very mountainous land. That we actually probably could build on it, but the city is like, hey, because you're in this critical slope zone, you need a road that's 22 feet wide that can get up to the very top of that mountain for fire trucks and ambulances and stuff like that. And so we that didn't scare us away. I think had we built those 4 to 5 units, we probably would have had a good proof of concept to then go and raise $4 or $5 million to execute. But I'm focused on this Texas deal right now, and so I'm shoveling all funds into it. But
are you selling that one too?
I'm trying. Yeah. Any equity that I can squeeze out of any property, I'm trying to put it directly into this elusive deal that I keep talking about. Because truthfully, if I'm being honest, and this is like just a lesson for anybody, I have always been an advocate of like, build in your own backyard. And that means like not literally in your backyard, but we're talking like 1.5 to 3 hours away. And this development deal that I'm currently working on, and it's on land that we're developing, and it checks all these boxes that we're talking about. It's 3 hours away from my house. And I just want the ability to drive there, check in on it, film content, document it, show people how to do this. And so my passions and priorities are kind of changing a little bit than when I got started in this 7 years ago. But yeah, I'm still going to be doing very similar. I'm still building a tiny house village. It's just going to be 3 hours away versus 12.
I do think you and I should probably build a cabin from the ground up and just film the whole thing.
I want to do that, yeah, for 15,000, you said.
For 15,000 in 30 days. I was trying to think of it. I think we could do it. Like if we lined everything up and we didn't hit the timer until we actually had everything lined up, I think we could do it. And I think you and I could build it.
You'd be so bummed at my carpentry skills. I mean, I'm fine. I could definitely like move stuff, but I can't build that crazy fire pit that you just built yesterday. That's for dang sure.
Oh man, we'll just have a whole crew behind the camera, and we're like, and go, and then they do it, and then we put you back into the frame.
Yeah, exactly. We just swap me out. Movie magic.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. There are 7 mistakes to avoid. Be on the lookout for whenever you're buying land. Okay, follow the power lines. Call the county, not the seller. Drive the last mile yourself. Watch out for your neighbors, NIMBYs, and noise. And then follow the county development pipeline. And lastly, if it's steep, don't take the leap. Kai and I, this is kind of what we focus on. This is what we teach people now in our program. So if you're interested in learning the mechanics of navigating the world of land or building a unique construction from the ground up, book a call with our team. We'll leave a link in the description down below. Set up a call. We'll talk strategy and see if we can help you. If you're all in on this concept, if you want to develop, if you want to do the glamping thing, whatever it is, then I highly suggest you check out this video right here where I break down a lot of the mistakes to avoid whenever developing from the ground up. So we'll catch you over on that video. Talk soon. Bye. Oh yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe, do all that stuff. But yeah, catch you on the next episode of Ride Belt. Bye.